Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. Now, I've already talked about the pilot episode, go watch that. But here's now the first season rundown. And it only had one season, sadly. It came out in October of 2013 and ended in April of 2014. And it aired on ABC. And it is a spin-off of ABC's Once Upon a Time that lasted for 7 seasons. And so this was created by the team that created Once Upon a Time. Edward Kisses, Adam Horowitz, Zach Estrin, and Jane Espenson. And so, ABC Studios created this show. And I was excited when this show came out because I love Once Upon a Time, but I only love season 1 and 2 of Once Upon a Time. I only like the second half of season 3 and the first half of season 4. After that, I don't like the show no more and I stopped watching. Well, no, to tell you the truth, I stopped after that whole Evil Swan story arc. And because that just didn't do it for me. It didn't pay off. And it's because one reason is because this show has a problem of wanting to have sympathetic villains and redeeming them. The only villains that actually were evil on like Once Upon a Time was Cruella de Vil. She was just straight up evil. Anyway. And so like because of that, I grew out of Once Upon a Time, and then I started watching The Walking Dead once I realized what The Walking Dead was. And so when they announced this spinoff, I believe that Once Upon a Time was probably in its like 3rd season or so. And by then I was still liking the show. So I was very happy and ecstatic for this show. And when this show came out, I loved it to death. In fact, I think this show is actually better than Once Upon a Time in its later seasons. Sadly, however, other people did not feel that way. Basically, people did not like this show. They missed the cast of Once Upon a Time. They missed the multiple characters and story arcs. And this show, because the thing about Once Upon a Time, it revolves heavily on backstory and flashbacks, to where flashbacks take up for the majority of an episode. Here, not so much. Here is mostly set in the present day, but there are still flashbacks that help you navigate through these characters' lives. And I appreciated that a whole lot more because I wanted to see no more in the present day than a bunch of flashbacks from stuff that happened long ago. The cast was much smaller because the problem with Once Upon a Time, it has a huge cast. And they don't get through everybody. And most people only appear in one major story arc and then they disappear for the next couple of episodes only to be like a background character. So Once Upon a Time had that flaw and lots of the fans started to see it many seasons later. Cause like the woman who played like, what's her name? Ruby, who was like Red Riding Hood. She was a breakout character, only appearing in a few episodes in season 1, more in season 2, sporadically in season 3. Then she left to have her own show, and you felt her absence and everything. And it was just kind of like, why give this character such a big arc only to like write her off? And that's because the actress was unhappy and she wanted her own show. And so Once Upon a Time had way too many characters. So I like this smaller cast and Wonderland and stuff. The cast is phenomenal and stellar. They did a great job in casting the people on this show. And, you know, I actually like a lot of the characters here in the cast more than Once Upon a Time, some of their people and stuff. Because, you know, you have this great, like, heroine, Alice from Alice in Wonderland and everything. And she's a very different Alice. Like, she's extremely headstrong and fierce and, like, determined and stuff like that. She has a boyfriend, Cyrus, who's a genie, who's very intelligent and smart when it comes to like, you know, magic and stuff. You have Will Scarlet, who is like, the knave, and he's like this cunning, street smart type dude who had his heart broken many years ago and all this other stuff. Then you have Anastasia, the Red Queen, and she, like, I wanted so badly to see her and Regina just like interact with each other or like fight each other or something like that, because she's not as story written well as like Regina and everything, but she's a close like second and everything, kinda. When she starts off very evil, very cruel, very nasty and stuff, but then once they do the whole redeeming arc, she kind of just became boring after that. Then there's Jafar, and my God, Jafar is evil in this thing. I mean, this dude is straight up evil, but he has a charm to him that's captivating and everything. And of course, they always combine characters from fairy tales and infuse them into the characters they have. Like, what's really interesting when they do, because they combine like Aladdin and what's her name, Alice in Wonderland story arcs together, and it's really interesting and very unique because the genie in this, he's of course based off Aladdin's genie, but he's also a little bit based off of Aladdin himself and everything. So it's like a combination of the two. Jafar in this is of course based off of Jafar, but he's also based off of Princess Jasmine, which is a really unique combination. Now, the rest of the cast is, like I said, is cool too. Like you have, what's his name? Is it Ziggy Top or something? It's something. He plays like the caterpillar dude. Oh man, what's his name? Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop. He plays like the caterpillar. Voiced it and everything. Now the dude who plays Pee Wee Herman originally, he was supposed to play Percy the White Rabbit. But then it went to John Lithgow. I'm not sure why. Whoopi Goldberg plays his wife, the another rabbit and stuff. And so like you have like whatchamacallem. You have some cameos from like, Once Upon a Time. Oh, I forgot who plays Cherish the cat. But yeah, because they had to tie this in somehow to Once Upon a Time. Because, like, Keith David played Cherish the cat. And he's very famous, as you know. And so, like, they had the Jabberwocky in this, and so originally Sebastian Stan was supposed to be in this show, but he has his commitments to that of Marvel, and that's why he stopped being on Once Upon a Time. Plus, he used to date Jennifer Morrison, and she was the lead in Once Upon a Time, and then they broke up. So yeah, and so like they were gonna recast him at first, but that led to fan backlash, so they decided to keep him out, which. The Mad Hatter is supposed to be in Wonderland, but hey, it is what it is. And so, like, they had to tie it in, of course, somehow to Once Upon a Time, right? So in the beginning of the episode, you see Will Scarlet in Storybrooke. And because he's like living there now. And so like we see a couple of cameos from Once Upon a Time. We see Granny, we see Grumpy, but it's like a quick cameo. And so then, he heads on over to Wonderland. But then halfway towards the end of the series, we see Alice and Cyrus head to Storybrooke, but they don't interact with nobody in Storybrooke. And it's kind of cool seeing them not familiar with technology, especially Cyrus because he's from Agrabah. But Alice should have been familiar with electricity and a refrigerator, I'm assuming, because so here's the weird thing. Storybrooke is the definitive real world. But when we go to Alice in Wonderland, now Wonderland's a fictional place, but when you remember Alice goes back to her home in the real world, her real world is still that of a fantasy real world. And so she should know, and it's like a colonial type period, and like probably like 1700s, something like that. So she should know what electricity is and everything. I'm not sure why she don't, but whatever. And so they needed somebody from Once Upon a Time to come on over here and kind of like help boost like ratings and everything. Because this had like mixed to positive reviews, but the ratings just wasn't there. So they needed somebody. So they bring in Barbara Hershey, I can't say her name, Barbara Hershey, who was the Queen of Hearts from Once Upon a Time, Regina's mother, and so she makes an appearance over there in one episode and one episode only. And so like this show was like a struggle because even though they spun it off and they was committed to making this show, you can tell production wise they wasn't. You think they would have had more cameos because they also had Robin Hood from Once Upon a Time and only like a small role, and that was about it. But production and stuff, you know how Once Upon a Time uses like a green or blue screen to do like the interior of like a palace and everything like that, and so they did that here, but the CGI was pretty crappy at times. Like sometimes you would see like Wonderland, like the outside foliage and everything. When they would use a green screen, it looked like you would be in Wonderland. The weird brick roads, the mushrooms everywhere, the purple skies. It looked very fantasy looking, right? You can tell you was in Wonderland. But then when they had to do, but those only like really quick scenes and everything, and they was really bad CGI shot. But then when they had to like do more shots and more scenes of them in the forest and everything, they just used a regular forest, and they had like a couple of mushrooms, like giant mushrooms here and there, and it didn't even look like Wonderland. It just looked like they was in the forest and you bought some giant mushrooms from like the store and just put them like places to make it look like Wonderland. Because in the pilot, that's the most it ever looks like Wonderland. Every time else you see this, it just looks like a typical normal show back in the ye old village and everything. And it was very unimpressive. Plus the CGI was really terrible when they did like those interior scenes and outside scenes. And it's like they did not care. But the CGI mostly went to the caterpillar, who was probably in like 3 episodes, but mostly to that of the rabbit, because he had to look good. And yes, he did look good. You could still tell he was CGI, but he still looked good. And they did change the appearance of them and stuff. Like the rabbit wears a suit. It has pink like glasses and everything, and like Morpheus, the Matrix type glasses and everything. It's a unique and interesting look. And so like they did a really good job on like the rabbit. But sadly, like I said before, this show just did not last. Fans just were not interested in it. I was really sad it never got a second season. But what was even worse is that like it never came out on DVD. Once Upon a Time has all 7 seasons on DVD, even the crappy ones, but yet this show couldn't get it. And so after the show got canceled and everything, they said that characters from this show would appear in like, Once Upon a Time. Not necessarily. In the 4th season of Once Upon a Time, Will shows up. And it's like, okay, cool, but where's Alice and Cyrus and everybody else? But it was only him. And the writers literally had no idea what to do with this character. It was so bad that they tried to put him in a love triangle with that of Belle and Rumpelstiltskin. That did not last long at all. And we see that it looks like he's pining over Anastasia and wants to resurrect her. So you think, okay, that's what he's going to be doing in the 4th season, but it doesn't happen. Then he disappears for like ever in the show. He reunites with like Robin Hood and everything. Then he disappears again. And then all of a sudden he's gone from the show and we don't know what happened to him. Well, it turns out that the actor wanted to leave the show because the writers had nothing for him. And he saw he was wasting his time. And he really was wasting his time. Now, Jafar would reappear in Once Upon a Time in its later season, I think like season 7, but it's played by a completely different actor. Also, another correction, that I said that when Will was in Once Upon a Time season 4, he was trying to find a way to bring back Anastasia. I forgot that in the finale, that Jafar brought Anastasia back to life. He killed her. She was dead for like a few episodes, and then he resurrected her back. Once all evil was like defeated, her and Will went off to be happily ever after. But then for some reason, she's nowhere to be found in Once Upon a Time, and Will's just there all sad and everything. So, what exactly is this show about? Well, the show is about Alice, who fell down the rabbit hole when she was a kid, lived in Wonderland for many, many years, to either she was a teenager or adult, and she fell in love with a genie. And she is madly in love with him. And she also became really good friends with Will Scarlet, along with the rabbit and stuff, and the Mad Hatter, stuff all like that. So when she returned home, her dad thought she was delusional. Her stepmother thought she was crazy, so they put her in an insane asylum. Well, at some point in time, the rabbit goes to Storybrooke and finds Will Scarlet and tells him that, Alice is in danger and you need to help her and stuff like that. So they travel to Alice Dimension, to where they save her, and they basically tell her Cyrus is alive. This causes her to want to go back to Wonderland and start believing in everything. And after all the electroshock therapy and everything told her that she's delusional. So Onward is basically just her and Will Scarlet just navigating through Neverland, not Neverland, but Wonderland, going through many, many, many adventures. And they go through a lot of adventures, man. Like, they interact with the caterpillar who wants to forget me not. So they have to go fight like a giant and everything. Then they find out he was cursed. And then I think he ended up killing his wife or something like that. And he just constantly looks in the forget me not to forget all that and pretend like he's happy and stuff, only to be killed by either Jafar or like the Red Queen and everything. And so, we get to see during flashbacks what Will and Alice's life was like in Wonderland, and all the people they interacted with, like how Will interacted with Lizard, who is the gender version of Bill the Lizard and everything, and how she has a crush on him, how he messed with the hearts of like other women who hate his behind, like this one fairy. And basically, they're in this forest with this purple pink like mist that causes you to forget like who you are. And Alice and Will, they're really great friends, even to the point where one is in like dire strength, or dire need I should say, and they cast a wish that basically bonds those two life forces together. So if one dies, the other dies. If one lives, the other lives, stuff like that. And she even shares one of her wishes with him, because it's kind of like, they're really good friends. And she just has one goal in mind. She just want to find her genie. Well, of course, the genie is being held captive by Jafar, and he is allied with the Red Queen. And, it's later found out, Jafar's origin, he wasn't always evil, and he has the Sultan, captive and everything, turns out to be his father. We have the Red Queen, who used to be involved with Will and everything, but left him to become like a queen, broke his heart, like all this other crap. We learned that Cyrus wasn't always a good man, and he was a little bit like Aladdin at times, with the whole thievery and stuff, and got cursed as like a genie. And it's crazy who his mom is, because she's the one who helped turn like Jafar extra evil and made him a sorcerer. So, just like Once Upon a Time, everybody's connected in some way or another. And, Jafar and the Red Queen, they basically want to bend the rules of magic because there are certain rules in place, things you can't do, like make a person fall in love and bring a person back to dead and, like stuff like that. And so in order to eliminate all the rules of magic and be the most powerful sorceress ever, you need two sorcerers, three genies, and three genie lamps. Once you do all that, you are pretty much omnipotent, which doesn't make no sense. Because if you ever watch Once Upon a Time, we've seen magic resurrect people. We've seen magic make folks fall in love, and and all kind of other crap. So I guess they needed some type of MacGuffin for like their series and everything. So that is pretty much the entirety of the plot of the show. And so, like, let's get into some character profiles. Now, one interesting thing about this show is that all the main characters are British. All the secondary characters are all American. They pretty much provide the voice work. The rabbit, the caterpillar, Cherish the cat, the rabbit's wife, stuff like that. The Mad Hatter, like I said before, does not appear in this series, but he is mentioned in everything. Let's start with the woman herself, Alice, played by Sophie Lowe. So Sophie Lowe is a British-born Australian actress, but she's primarily known for singing, and she dabbles in acting here and there. She's very lovely, and for a singer, she's actually a really good actress, which shocked, surprised me because like most singers can't act, but she can really act. She has this very heavenly, low, sweet, kind, soft-natured voice, and it's very pleasant to hear. The only problem is when she's giving an empowering speech to like her army and everything, she doesn't sound very commanding because she has that like soft voice. So like, yeah, she needed to put a little bit more grunt in it when she was talking to her army. She is a very fierce, very headstrong, very determined woman. She's very intelligent and she's very good at fighting with a sword because both the knave, Will Scarlet, and Cyrus, the genie, taught her how to fight with a sword. When we first see her in Wonderland, she's very playful and joyful and everything, even when she meets like Will for the first time because he's part of the royal like army and everything, and they're looking for her to like kill her, and she's very playful with him as she's like kicking his butt and capturing him and stuff like that. And then they end up becoming friends, and she ends up returning back his heart that he didn't want no more. After this, they just pretty much become friends, and they kidnap the rabbit to where she wants to prove to her father, hey, look, everything in Wonderland is like real, but she doesn't have a chance to do that. And so, of course, when she goes back to her world and everything, she's put in an insane asylum. Now, she falls madly in love with Cyrus, and it is the primary focus of her entire story arc is just to free her genie, fall in love, and be happily ever after. It's a good premise and a good story arc. The only problem is she's so devoted to him. But that's the whole fairy tale Disney type lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Now, this isn't really based on Disney fairy tales, but they do have some sprinkling in there and stuff. But this is mostly just based on fairy tale made by ABC Studios. And that is just her primary goal, is to find Cyrus. And she'll do anything possible to find him. And so, like, she travels through Wonderland with that of Will. She ends up giving him, like, one of her wishes. When one of them is, like, hurt, I think they wish that, that the other can, like, I don't know, somehow they save their life. So where they're kind of, like, bonded together. But her and Will, like, it's weird. Like, okay, we only see her and Cyrus in like flashbacks, brief flashbacks, and we see them towards the end around episode 9. And I think there's about 13 episodes. So from episode 9 to 13, we really see them together. But honestly, we see her and Will throughout the entirety of the show to where you kind of wish that her and Will would get together. she hates Anastasia, the Red Queen, because she assumed that Anastasia murdered Cyrus, but then, turned out that she just has him captive along with Jafar, and Anastasia is very evil. So all she ever wants is just to whoop on her, but can't because Will, that's his ex and everything. And even without a heart, she still doesn't like hurt Anastasia, but she still despises her until the end when they all kiss and make up and do that whole, oh, you're my friend type thing. You helped save my life, blah, 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 stuff like that, right? And so, like, pretty much since Anastasia isn't really her antagonist no more and also ends up dying, Jafar is her last antagonist to like defeat. When Jafar is like super uber powerful now, he raises an army of the dead. She raises an army of like villagers. But then when they clash together, the sad thing is we don't get to see this big climactic battle with soldiers, because all we see is Alice like fight like some soldiers and then get captured and this and that. They end up tricking Jafar, and so when he's defeated and turned into a genie, her and everybody else just goes back to like her world and everything, where her and Cyrus get married. Her father finally accepts everything because Jafar and the rabbit scared the piss out of him. And so her and Cyrus end up getting married and living happily ever after, where they have a kid, and many years later Alice decides to write Alice in Wonderland the story and tell it to like her daughter and stuff like that. Now what's really crazy is that after she got married and everybody said their goodbyes, like Will, Anastasia, Cyrus, and Alice, something crazy happened. Like you hear this like wonderful da 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 like type music, and as everybody's walking away from each other, Alice turns around, she's like, Will, and then she runs really fast towards him, and she just gives him the biggest embrace and hug. I thought they was gonna kiss. I thought she was gonna leave Cyrus for Will, but no, she just wanted to give him a big old hug because that's like her best friend in the whole world. That would have been a crazy twist though. It is a shame she never crossed over to the Once Upon a Time show. I would have loved for her and Snow White to interact and kick some butt along with Emma and stuff, and her to go up against Regina. That would have been amazing. But the writers went crazy in the head around season 4 and 5 of the show, and the show is never the same afterwards. Will Scarlet, also the Knave of Hearts, is played by Michael Saka. And he is a very cunning, very street smart type person. He is a thief. He is poor. He is an opportunist and everything. He starts off by joining that of Robin Hood and his merry men just so he can steal some type of MacGuffin from that of Maleficent. And we do get to see Maleficent in here. No, actually we don't get to see her. I think we hear her voice. I'm not even sure if it's the actress from Once Upon a Time, but it probably is. And so basically he steals it because he needs it for Anastasia, his girlfriend. Basically Anastasia is Cinderella's sister, and so she didn't get to marry the prince. And so they decided he's gonna give her everything her heart desired. So they go to a foreign land, which is Wonderland. And so while they're still just being poor and they're thieving, and so they dress up to a masquerade type party to where they're gonna rob the king blind. But then Anastasia ends up falling for the king and everything, and it breaks his heart. He tells her plain and simple, he's leaving Wonderland. He wants her to come with him. She's going to until she's persuaded by the Queen of Hearts not to go with him. So heartbroken and everything, he tells the Queen of Hearts, just take my heart. I don't want my heart. I don't want to feel these emotions no more. So she takes it and she keeps it. And basically, if you take somebody's heart, you can control them. So he stays in Wonderland as part of the royal guard and everything. And it's there like throughout his life on Wonderland where like he breaks other women's hearts like that fairy and everything. At some point in time he interacts with like Lizard, and he befriends that of Alice. At some point in time, when he befriends Alice and he gets his heart back, she uses it to, one, make him stop trying to kill her, and two, for him to, like, stop working for, like, the queen and have his memories back and all this other crap. And he decides to leave Wonderland to where he goes to Storybrooke. While in Storybrooke, like, the rabbit finds him and tells him, oh, Alice needs your help and blah, 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 blah. So he comes back and he helps Alice. And like I told you before, they go on all these adventures while despising the Red Queen. And so, like, even though he doesn't have his heart, he still cares about like his friends. He cares about Lizard, he cares about Alice and all this other crap. But basically, after getting Alice back, he's like, look, we need to get out of Wonderland. But she doesn't want to go without Cyrus, so he helps her and everything. And it's to the point where Alice and Cyrus are reunited, but then something happens, and I think something happens to one of them. I can't remember what, but one of them's dying, so the other is dying. And there's nothing Cyrus can do about it. So Will makes his wish. He says that, he wishes that he can, I guess, like, alleviate Alice's pain or burden or something like that. So, because magic always has a price and it's very tricky, it decides to grant his wish, and Alice is no longer burdened by like not being with Cyrus and stuff. Cyrus' genie powers are gone and is now transferred into Will. So he is now a genie living in a lamp, and he is not liking it. So Lizard ends up finding like his bottle with pretty much, because he's all depressed now. He pretty much just causes her to like waste away all her wishes. She gives him one to where he wants everybody in town to get drunk. So after that, like, they're talking and he has no idea she has a crush on him until she finally he's all like, look, I'm gonna help you find like your Prince Charming type dude. So she wishes to kind of like look more fancy and everything, and he dolls her up, right? And so she tells him straight up, like, look, man, you're my crush and everything. But he tells her, look, I'm sorry, but I can't love you. I can't love nobody else because I ain't got a heart no more. And so, by mistake, while talking to him, she wishes that Will feel something. And then magic does the most unthinkable thing ever. It kills her. With her now dead, Will, of course, he still has his feelings and emotion. He just can't love nobody. And so, like, it causes him pain to see his friend die. And that was the craziest, most traumatic thing I ever saw in this series, that it literally just killed her and everything. And he can't bring her back to life because that's the rule of magic. So after that, Anastasia becomes his new owner of like the bottle. By this time, Anastasia is good and she's back in love with like Will, because pretty much Jafar has betrayed her. So now she wants to redeem herself and everything, right? Well, of course, Jafar ain't gonna let that go because he wants that bottle. So he frees the Jabberwocky and everything. They get Anastasia, they cause her tremendous pain with the Jabberwocky's powers, and causes her to wish for the dumbest things ever, like her crown and this and that. And so she can use up all her wishes so Jafar can be Will's master. But in order for the Jabberwocky to find out that Anastasia is the new owner, she rips the eyes out of Lizard and gives them to Jafar so he can cast like a spell to see who the new owner is. So Lizard is about as dead can be and has no eyes now. So that's just sad. She deserves so much better, man. Because she was such a nice character. She helped Alice and Will try to like free Cyrus, only to get whacked around by like the queen, I think it was, and then Will at some point turned to stone, and and it's just like so crazy. But by this time, they need his heart back in order for, like, to cast that spell that Jafar wants. So they get his heart back, they put it back in him, and Jafar's all like, let's see if that heart of yours still works. And he just grabs like Anastasia and stabs her from behind. And of course, Will is now back in love with Anastasia and gets to watch her die. Pretty much Jafar's like, look, dude, once I have my magic, hey, I will bring her back to life. But you gotta bring me back my staff that Cyrus and Alice has. So he goes to steal it, but Alice falls over in like the river. He saves her, and he decides he just can't do this. So they devise a plan, but Jafar calls him back. The genie powers in this is weird. It's not like Aladdin. The dude can't teleport nowhere. He can't fly around. He can't blast people when he wants to. He can only just use magic whenever somebody wishes for something. And so anyways, after Jafar is like defeated, well, before Jafar is defeated, he resurrects Anastasia, but brainwashes her to be in love with him. So Will constantly has to watch Anastasia like make out with like Jafar and stuff. But of course, true love's kiss like saves her and everything, only for her to die again and be resurrected again. But pretty much they live out the rest of their lives all happy and lovey-dovey until we get to the fourth season of Once Upon a Time, when we see Will is back in Storybrooke alone with no Anastasia, no Cyrus, no Alice, and it's just kind of like, what happened between him and Anastasia? It's never explained. He ends up in a love triangle with Belle and Rumpelstiltskin, and then he's just written off the show because he barely appeared on the show because the actor wanted off the show because they wasted his potential by not having any storylines for him. It's quite sad. He is a really cool character and everything. And it's just so sad how they treated him in Once Upon a Time. Cyrus is played by Peter Godot, and basically he didn't start off as a genie. He was actually a normal human person, lived hundreds of years ago in Agrabah. See, the problem with the flashbacks, you never know what time period you're in. Sometimes it could be a day, a month. They'll go back a couple of years. Sometimes they go back 100 years, and you just don't never always really know what time period you're in, which makes these shows very confusing. But basically, he has two brothers, and Cyrus is a thief. He's basically also like Aladdin. And so with that, um, actually, no, I think I already said it. Yeah, he's basically based off of Aladdin. And so he's a thief and he cons people. And one person he cons in the card game decides to get revenge on his mom. Burnt the house down and she is badly hurt. So he knows of a place that can save her. There's like this magic water. And it's called, I forget what it's called, the Oasis of Wonders or something like that. Or Fountain of Wonders. It's kind of like the Cave of Wonders, but it just has magical water. Anyway, so he goes there and him and his brothers take him. But then this like really evil looking woman comes up. She doesn't like being woken up, and she said, look, you steal my water, I mean, you're gonna pay the price. And so I will curse you. So basically the brothers want to give back the water, but Cyrus like, nah, man, we got to save our mama. So they take the water back and they pour it down the mom's throat. It doesn't work. So they start covering her body with it. She is resurrected. But that evil looking woman is like, man, you took my water. I will curse you with the powers of a genie. So him and his brothers became genies and he never saw his brother again. At some point in time, he made his way to Wonderland some bizarre way. And after that, he ends up, meeting Alice, falling in love and this and that. But he is pursued by Jafar and he is pursued by that of the Red Queen. He is captured where he spends the majority of his life there while Alice is back in her world in an insane asylum. So when, he's finally freed and everything, he escapes, he goes searching for Alice. Their hearts are connected. There's like a magic compass that can lead each other to each other, all that kind of stuff. Oh, there's a magical heart necklace and everything that he gave her that beats and everything. When he finds her, they're back and happy and all in love. But at one point, he actually shouts at her because he doesn't want her to know his past that he's kept hidden. So anyways, it's revealed that his mother is the one who was Jafar at one point in time, like kind of like lover and taught him magic and all this other stuff. And his mom is actually Jafar's staff. So they figured they can end like Jafar's reign by taking away the genie powers. If he doesn't have the genie powers and the lamps, he can't do what he wants to do. So they gotta return the water. The compass lead him to the staff, and he's like, oh crap, this must be my mama and everything. And so pretty much after that, at some point, Jafar like kills him right in front of his mom. And so he starts to die, but then comes back alive somehow. I forget how. And so after Jafar is defeated and everything, him and Alice, they like, get married, have a kid, and they live their lives happily ever after in the real life version world of Alice world and everything, but not Storybrooke. And so Cyrus is a really cool character. He's very smart. He knows a lot about magic. And he's just this really like charming, like he's basically Prince Charming, like, and everything you can want if you wanted to like date a person. So it was very shocking to find out that he used to be a thief and he used to be like up to no good and like all this other stuff. But it's interesting they combined the Aladdin and the genie like type mythos together, which they broke all that on Once Upon a Time season 7 when they actually brought in Jasmine and Aladdin and the return of Jafar. Oh yeah, and his brothers like are free and everything like that once they defeat all evil and they're all happy to be with each other. Anyway, Amora is their mother. And so when we first get introduced to her, she's walking in town in Agrabah and everybody is terrified of her. When she walks in town, they just run and hide. How and why she turned evil is never explained because the show's only 13 episodes, so they kind of had to rush some stuff. Unlike Once Upon a Time, that's 22 episodes a season. And so, like, when she meets Jafar, he is a little kid and he's pissed off at his dad, the Sultan. So she pretty much raises Jafar from a kid to that of an adult and everything like that. And Jafar is really nice at that time and she's teaching him magic, but in order for him to truly be who she needs him to be, she needs him to just be evil and kill people and stuff like that, something he won't do. So she causes Jafar to kill a friend of his by giving him this type of like wine. The wine is poison. This pisses off Jafar and he will hold a grudge against her for a very long time. When he dupes her and everything, he ends up casting a spell that causes her to turn into his staff. The one in like, because in the Aladdin cartoon, he had no magic. He just had technology. And then when the genie turned him into a sorcerer and then later on a genie, he didn't have magic. For the show, they needed him to be more magical based and everything, which I understand. And so she's just been living in the staff for the longest time. But then when Jafar tried to kill Cyrus with the magic of the staff would not allow him. He didn't understand why. Cyrus didn't understand why. But then it was indeed just, Cyrus's mother. Once they resurrect her off screen, she then pretty much she does what she sought out to do. So basically, it turns out that even though she was evil in the past, she wasn't entirely evil. Once she found out her sons became genies, she started looking for the lamps. She needed help, so she that's why she gave like Jafar magic and taught and all this other stuff. So with the two powers of the sorcerers, they are able to conduct the spell and all this other crap. And so all she wanted to do was free her sons, but Jafar just wanted magic. And so they're both super powered and they have this really cool magical battle, which was pretty good CGI. But after they leave, she decided, in order to stop Jafar, I must give up my life and give up the water and all this other crap. She goes to do that only for Jafar to like whoop on her and everything. As the water comes out of her body, she just turns to water and she dies. Cyrus tries to put the water back in the oasis, but Jafar takes it and he just smashes it. So Jafar's all like, haha, you can't return the water, so you can't stop me, blah, blah, stuff like that. But then Alice is all like, dude, you forget like the number one rule of this oasis. You can't steal the water or the evil lady's gonna come and get you. So let's see, who should we talk about? I guess we'll talk about Jafar next. So Jafar is played by Naveed Andrews. And so, like I told you before, he didn't start off evil. But when he was a kid, he found out his dad was the Sultan. He went to his father and everything, and his father wanted nothing really to do with him. Basically, he made Jafar into a servant, and he had a brother. And he treated his brother a whole lot nicer. And I guess the brother didn't know Jafar was like his brother, whatever. So they treat him like crap. And it's to the point where the Sultan pretty much banishes him. This holds a very huge grudge in his heart. He wants revenge. Anyway, I told you he meets Samora. He becomes magically empowered, and she causes him to kill like his friend. And so by mistake. So anyway, he wants to finish what Amora started. He wants like the powers of like omnipotent, and so like since he doesn't have Amora no more, he goes to Wonderland because he finds out the genie bottle's over there, and he partners himself with Anastasia. It's a good partnership at first, but then he doesn't like her, so of course he's gonna betray her. He's very vengeful, very evil, and very charming and charismatic. And he will kill a person like it doesn't even matter. He'll just like snap them, chop off their head. He doesn't care. Even if you work for him, like one of the Tweedles did, Tweedledee or Tweedledum worked for him and betrayed the queen, and then he just took his head for some bizarre reason. And so, but then he gave him a body again, but then he chopped the head off of like a soldier and gave him the body so Tweedledee can have like a body and everything. And so once he starts to realize that Alice is a thorn in his backside, he needs to know everything about her. So he engages the help of the rabbit, and they go back to Alice's home, where he talks to Alice's father, and he impersonates Alice's father, trying to manipulate that of Alice and everything. This dude will do whatever it takes just to get his magic. He'll kill whoever it takes. Like, he just don't care. But one odd thing is that he has imprisoned his father since he's been an adult. And he hasn't killed his father for some bizarre reason. He just keeps him in a cage in his little cave dungeon. Anyways, when he becomes omnipotent and everything, he tells his father to come here, and he basically makes his father love him and everything. And this is something he just always wanted. So I'm like, oh, no, don't make another sympathetic villain and everything again. These shows always do that. But then he tells his father, I want nothing more but that for you to just die. So his father drowns, and water just spews out his mouth out of like nowhere. And it's just like, well, if he wanted him to die, why in the world didn't you just kill him before? And that's because he wanted his father to see how powerful he was. So anyway, he raises an army of the dead to go after Alice and all of them, and he captures them. But back to the Oasis thing. So when they're at like, you know, the Oasis and everything, Alice is all like, dude, if you steal the water, you get cursed and become a genie. So just like in the Aladdin thing, he gets the cuffs and he gets put in a bottle. And so after that, he's just done for and everything. And his bottle just like disappears, going to a foreign land to like, you know, until somebody can rub his bottle. But then, of course, many years later, he appeared on Once Upon a Time, played by a completely different actor, only because Naveed was unavailable because he was working on Sense8. And yes, it turns out, but the writer said this is the same Jafar. I don't know how the new actor plays him and everything. I've never seen him in a very charismatic type role, just very serious and everything. So it's probably gonna be like a completely different portrayal. He already's wearing like different clothes and stuff. The one that Once Upon a Time wears more of a traditional Jafar outfit, whereas the one in Wonderland just wears something completely different. And it's funny how they combined the whole Jasmine thing with Jafar. Like, that's just like really neat. Now, the Jabberwocky. Jafar, after Anastasia betrays him and he betrays her and everything, he needs help. So he enlists the help of the Jabberwocky, who is in prison. And it took like 1,000 men to defeat her, and they all died and everything. And there's a magical sword that if you stab her with it, she can't use her magic. So she's pinned to the ceiling. He frees her and tells her, like, look, I'll let you have your freedom for the rest of your life, but you gotta help me and everything. So of course he wants her to like terrorize that Will and Alice and get the lamps and stuff like that. She does what he wants, but the thing is weird about this Jabberwocky, she's not a monster. She's like this hot platinum blonde woman with makeup around her eyes that's kind of scaly like a snake. And for some reason, people are just terrified of her, and I don't know why. All she does is talk to them. Like, she can sense their fear. She can smell what type of like scent they have that's like fearful and everything. Like Jafar is like pine needle or whatever in the winter, and so like she just talks to people, and it causes them to like be terrified. Or she'll just look at them and be like, I want you to die, and they'll die. So I guess that terrifies people. But other than that, she's not scary. She's just this weird, emetic, like really hot lady. And so a couple episodes in, she, like I say, she's evil. But then towards the end of the series, she turns good for some bizarre reason. Like, she feels that Jafar is not going to end up like freeing her. And so she goes to Will and she goes to Alice. Because of this betrayal and everything, Jafar pretty much just pins her to that of like the dungeon and turns off the lights and keep her there, and she's gone for the rest of the series. And we don't know what the world happened to her. The White Rabbit is pretty cool in this. I think he was supposed to be played by the Pee Wee Herman dude, but then later, for whatever reason, wasn't. And then John Lithgow voiced him and does an amazing job. He has a great design. He has like this little top hat. Well, not a top hat, but I forget what type of hat it's called, but it's a tiny little hat. He has these spectacles that are pink, and he wears like a white suit and everything. His CGI does look like CGI, but it's pretty good CGI, but not great CGI. Better CGI would be in the Apple Plus Ghost Rider series when that rabbit looked more realistic. But he has a cool design. And so basically he has a wife played by Whoopi Goldberg. And she's dressed like kind of like a Egyptian Romana type woman and everything. And so basically what it is that Anastasia has kidnapped his family. And he has to do what she says, because if not, she'll kill the family. So he goes looking for Will. They go rescue Alice to find out where exactly is like the genie's lamp and everything. And so basically he is a good character, but he has to work for the bad guys because he's too scared of them. But then the good guys end up finding out, so they end up rescuing his like family. So pretty much he works for them now, and he helps take them to different dimensions whenever it is they need to go. And so that's basically all it is with him. Which leads us to Anastasia, the Red Queen. So like I said before, she is Cinderella's sister, one of her evil sisters that could not get the prince. She falls in love with Will, and they want to go to a foreign land where they can start anew. When they go to Wonderland, like I said before, they're poor. And then they go to like a masquerade ball where the Red King takes an interest in her. And so all she wants is to be wealthy and rich and like powerful and like a queen. So of course she ends up breaking Will's heart. And so like I told you, he tried to get her back, but then they had the cameo episode of like the Heart of Queens. And the Heart of Queens pretty much manipulates her and manipulates Will and all this other stuff, and so they don't get to be together. And she teaches Anastasia magic. Their magic is always limited on the show. They can make things float around, they can kill people with it, they can conjure fire, stuff like that. We'll never really get to see the extent of like her power. And so she is as evil can come. She is stunning and everything. She could rival that of Regina if given more screen time and get to see more evil stuff they do. I wanted to see her interact with Regina so much because Regina is the queen and she is evil. But Anastasia is like a little bit more of a watered down version of like Regina. With more episodes and see how evil she is. Oh, she could have rivaled her and stuff. And so like she's just flat out evil. It turns out that she starved her village and everything and caused monsters to eat them. So then when she does have her redeeming arc, they turn the tables on her, tie her, Cyrus, and Alice up so they can all get eaten by monsters and everything. And so basically, she's foolish enough to believe what Jafar is saying, but then she's smart enough to realize he could be tricking her. Well, once Tweedledee's all like, look, dude, he's betraying you. What? So then, of course, she wants to betray him, but then she needs the help of Alice and Will. Secretly, she is still madly in love with Will. She just never shows it when she's evil. But like later on, when she has her redeeming arc, it's weird. She's better when she's evil. When she turns good, it's so rushed. And she's so nice and everything now. She just wants everybody to forgive her. She's always smiling whether she's evil or good. And she doesn't call people dearie like Rumpelstiltskin. But then she calls people darling and everything. So they always do that with their evil people. When Regina tried to do it, it just felt so fake. Anyway, she turns good and she's Will's master now. They manipulate her to waste her wishes and everything. But it's just her redeeming arc just seems so out of nowhere because you didn't realize that she's still madly in love with like Will and everything. And so after the Jabberwocky and Jafar do whatever they do to her and everything, and they get Will's heart back, they pretty much Jafar stabs the crap out of her, dude, and she just dies right then and there. And Will is just so heartbroken. And I already told you before, they resurrected her just to have her make out with Jafar in front of Will. And so when Jafar was defeated by, like, turning into a genie, the magic he used to bring, like, Anastasia back alive killed her again. But then the evil lady decided, okay, look, I'll give you my water to make her, like, bring her back to life because it wasn't her time and all this other crap. And so, like, now Anastasia's back, like, alive, and her and Alice have finally, like, kissed and made up. And so now she's so happy she's gonna spend the rest of her life with Will. And until we get to Once Upon a Time, and it sees that they have broken up for some bizarre reason, but we do not know why, because the writers could care less to tell us. And, I always like this version of the Red Queen. It's cool how they combine the Cinderella story with that of hers. And, like, and how, like, the Queen of Hearts helped, like, twist her mind even more. I wanted to see more of the Queen of Hearts because we heard about her evil reign in Wonderland. But when exactly did that happen? Because the Red Queen has been, like, controlling it for the longest time. Now, the Queen of Hearts did murder the king of the Red King, but this is interesting about the Red King. He never wanted Anastasia to use magic because he feared it and everything. I will say, like I said before, she's evil, she's smart, and she's like irresistible. And I wanted to see her and Regina go at it so bad, or at least partner together, and that never ever happened. So that totally sucks. I do feel like this was a great show. It's sad that fans hated this show so much, only because it was not Once Upon a Time. It did not have the budget of Once Upon a Time. It didn't have tons of characters that they remembered, and it mostly dealt in the present day instead of the past. And because of that, it just got canceled. And I felt like this was a better series than Once Upon a Time because by season 3, whether fans will admit to it or not, by season 3, Once Upon a Time fell off the rails. And, like, it was never able to recuperate after that. They tried twist after twist, and it lasted for, some more seasons and everything, but it was just never the same show. And people started to get tired of Once Upon a Time. And Wonderland was way better than season 3 all the way to season 7 of Once Upon a Time. A lot of the characters on Once Upon a Time stopped showing up. Most of them were doing like other projects. They kept getting written off the show. Some of the people's acting started to like dwindle. They started making more villains into good people and redeeming them. The lead actress herself, Jennifer Morrison, wanted to leave the show. They knew the show was dying. And fans, just like fans gave up on Wonderland, they gave up on Once Upon a Time too. So it's one of those shows that, Once Upon a Time, it only should have lasted a few seasons. Like really, it really should have, because it overstayed its welcome. But Wonderland, because it had a smaller cast, smaller episodes, they was able to tell a more cohesive story. And I feel like it was a whole lot better than that of the parent show. And it deserves so much more love than what it got. But it never did. It will never be on DVD and stuff. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.